All right, so for this video, we are going to talk and discuss about the different ethnic groups and racial groups and their profile differences amongst each other's facial features. And yeah, so let's get to it. All right, so right here we have the total amount of people that I have rated already, which is 146 people. All of this will be down in the link in the description. So if you want to access my data sheet, my formula sheet, it will all be down below in the description. So make sure to check that out, and you'll be able to access this information. And I'm gonna also continue to rate more celebrities as I continue my my YouTube journey. And this number that you will see right here, 146, will increase. And I'm also going to try to give it a nice little balance in between the different groups that I already have, between the blacks, whites, natives, multiracials, Asians. I'm going to try to focus less on the blacks and whites and focus more on the other groups for the men and for the female. I also have rated more females than men. I believe I rated maybe, let's say, like 3 more females than men. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the men's side so I can even things out a bit. All right, so first we have the total, which is 146 people. Right now, I believe I've rated 147. So this number will always update, but during the timeline for this video is 146 right now, and the numbers will always continue to change, and I will always continue to update these things. All right, so for the men's side, we have 5%, 60%, 25%, 10%, and 0%. And then we also have blacks, which is 24, meaning 24 people, whites, 22 people, Asians, 14, natives, 7, multiracial, 5, and then we have the group total, which is 72. So that's all the people that I have rated for the men's side, and the same thing includes for the female side. All right, so for the percentage, is what the percentage is that I have on my data sheet. If a person has a harmony score of 60% or higher, which means that you have a good facial harmony score, and this is not an easy thing to get. And also another thing too is I rate celebrities. So a lot of these celebrities is going to be fairly tough to even get a harmony score of 60 or higher. A lot of my subscribers that come to me for face ratings, even they don't get a harmony score that is 60% or higher. So this is for a subset of group of people that are extremely, I guess you could say, extremely attractive. So this is not something easy to get. Okay, so for blacks, I got 5% for the male side, and then for the female side, 26%. For the whites, I got 60%, and then for the females, I got 43%. And then for the Asians, I got 25%. For the natives, I got 17. For the multiracials, for the female side, I got 3. And then for the multiracial, for the men's side, I got 0%. And then for the Asians, for the female side, I got 11%. And yeah, so, and also for the natives, for the men's side, I got 10%. And what the percentage is the amount, so total. So out of, let's say for the men's side, I believe I got 25 people that fall within the 60 percentile range for their harmony score. Out of all of them, 60% of them are white people, 5% is black, 25% is Asian, so on and so forth. That's how I do it. Now, another thing too is it also ranges because of the amount of people that I already rated for each subgroup. So obviously blacks and whites have the most, so they're gonna be a little bit more favored in this. Another thing too, before I start, a lot of these measurements are tailored towards more of European centric features. So you would expect whites to have a higher percentage of harmony score. So that's why they lead in the percentage. All right. And also because I rated more and in general. All right. So that's why multiracials is at 0 for the men's side, because I only rated 5 of them. But that still doesn't mean that they can't get a percentage. Just none of them that I've rated yet has fall within that harmony score. Okay. All right. So let's get to it. All right, so for the first one, before I even start, I also want to say is if you see the color green means that is they fall within the ideal range. If you see yellow, that means they are slightly outside of the ideal range, and if you see red, that means they do not fall within the ideal range. That it is not ideal at all. All right, so it is a flaw. So ideal, green, near ideal, yellow, and then red is not ideal, so that will be a flaw. Okay. All right, so for the first one is the eye spacing or eye separation ratio. So the eye spacing is measured from both ends of the bizygomatic cheekbones to the distance between the pupils. And to calculate this ratio, you would divide the pupil distance by the cheekbone distance. And blacks individuals typically have the widest pupil distance, while Asians tend to have the shortest distance. Okay. And that's exactly what you can see here. And I drew each line for the male side and for the female side within the same racial groups to make it easier for y'all to see it. Okay. All right, so next we have is the facial thirds. So you will be dividing the face into 3 horizontal sections. The lower third spans from the bottom of the chin to the nasal tip or the subnasal area. The middle third will extend from the subnasal to the peak of the brow bone. And the upper third is from the brow to the hairline, okay? And then men generally have slighter, longer upper thirds compared to women, likely due to more prominent hairline recession in men, which elongates the upper third. All right, so next we have is the canthal tilt. This measurement is taken from the medial canthus to the lateral canthus, so the inner to outer canthus. And among all groups, Asians exhibit the highest canthal tilt, as you can clearly see. All right, so the facial width to height ratio, or the FWHR. So it starts from the upper lip, extending to the lower bottom side of the eyebrows. The measured height will be divided by the width of the face to get the facial width to height ratio. And all of these kind of just vary amongst each group. And yeah. All right, so next we have is the jaw frontal angle. This is the angle formed from the front of the jaw, measured from both ends of the mandible down to the chin. All racial groups fall within the ideal range for this measurement. All right, so we have is the cheekbone height settiness, and to measure the vertical height of the midface from the upper lip to the horizontal eye line, which is the pupil distance tangent line, okay? The peak of the cheekbones represent the most prominent part of the face, so you will be dividing the vertical heights of the cheekbones by the mid-face height to determine the cheekbone prominence ratio, or to determine the height of the cheekbones. Okay, so women will typically have slightly higher cheekbones than men. All right, next we have is the total facial height to width ratio. This ratio divides the vertical distance between the bottom of the chin to the top of the hairline, and this will be divided against the horizontal width of the face. And across all racial groups, Black individuals have the longest head shapes relative to the width. All right, next is the bigonial width. So using the mouth line as a reference point, measure the bigonial width of the jaw just below the mastoid muscles. Divide the jaw width by the overall face width. Asian women tend to have the smallest jaw width, while white men have the largest. All right, so chin to philtrum ratio. This ratio compares the height of the chin from the bottom of the chin to the bottom lip, with the height of the philtrum from the upper lip to the subnasal area. Multiracial women tend to have a shorter philtrum relative to the chin height, giving them a more compact philtrum, so a shorter philtrum in general, compared to the other groups. All right, next is the neck width. So we're gonna measure the width of the jaw, so the horizontal distance at the lip line, and the width of the neck. So you're gonna divide the neck width by the jaw width to calculate the ratio. And as we see here, Asians generally have a narrower neck compared to the other racial groups. All right, next is the mouth to nose width ratio. So this ratio compares the horizontal distance from one end of the mouth to the other, with the width of the nose. So the width of the nose is measured across the nostrils, and you will divide the mouth of the nose by the width of the nose. Well, you divide the mouth by the width of the nose. All right. So for the Asians and blacks individuals, they'll typically have a wider nose width compared to all the other groups. All right. So mid-face ratio. This ratio calculated by dividing the pupil distance by the mid-face height, and it reveals that black individuals, they generally have more compact mid-faces, while Asians tend to have a more elongated mid-face appearance. And the pupil distance would make a difference in the mid-face measurement for both races, since they were in the extreme ends of the ideal range for their eye separation ratio. So like I said again, with the ESR, Asians have the closer pupil distance, while blacks have the longest pupil distance compared to all the other racial groups. So you will expect Asians to have a more elongated facial appearance, since their pupils are, closer set, while blacks are going to have more compact faces because of their pupil distance. And this is really just the kind of like the mid face being divided by the pupils in a way to get that ratio. So yeah, so the pupil distance does have an impact on it. All right, next is the eyebrow settiness. So this measurement divides the vertical distance from the eye line to the bottom of the eyebrow with the vertical height of the eye orbits. Although there is, a strong correlation within each group, achieving this measurement can be challenging because lower values indicate that the eyebrows are closer to the eyes. So this is one of like a tough measurement to pass. And the lower the number is, the more closer. So as you can see, like multiracials, they have the lowest numbers. So that means that their eyebrows are more closer sets to their eyes. And that's exactly what it's trying to say. All right, so eye spacing. So this is the one eye test. So the spacing between the eyes should be significant to fit another eye in the middle, indicating that the eye orbits are properly spaced. While Asians typically have the shortest pupil distance, they are compensated with this with the widest spacing in between their eye orbits. So Asians, they even though they have pupils that are more closer sets, their actual eye, so the actual the eye orbits are kind of spaced out. So you want to at least have enough space to fit an extra eye in between. And Asians have more than enough space to fit an extra eye in between their actual both eyes, if that makes any sense. So there's a little bit too much spacing in between their eyes. All right, so the eye aspect ratio. This is very simple measurement. It is the width of the eye orbit that is being divided by the height to calculate the eye aspect ratio. And every group is within the ideal range. And these are for all the celebrities that I have rated. All right, next is the lower lip to upper lip ratio. This ratio divides the vertical distance from the bottom lip to the vertical height of the upper lip. So it's the bottom lip vertical height versus the upper lip vertical height that's being divided. And then for the white individuals, they tend to have the shortest upper lip height relative to other groups. So some of these measurements shouldn't really be a surprise to some of y'all. Whites do have a shorter upper lip compared to all the other racial groups. And yeah, so this really isn't really too much of a surprise. That's why you see whites at 1.56 and for the females at 1.43. And yeah. All right, so this is the deviation for the ipsilateral alar angle to the jaw frontal angle. And these two angles should ideally be identical, indicating facial harmony. The first angle is measured from the subnasal going up to the outer corners of the eyes, while the second measurement, which is below, which is taken from the mandible down to the chin. And this is one of the most challenging measurements to pass, as it combines multiple metrics. All right. So it combines multiple features. So the more features that is being combined together is going to be more complicated to pass. And as you can see, a lot of the celebrities from the different racial groups struggle to even get the near ideal area. All right, so the eyebrow tilt. So we measure the eyebrows from the top inner corner or to the peak of the arch. So it starts from the top of the inner corner all the way following up to the arch. All right, or that peak point, and creating an angle just above the eyebrows with the tangent line. Females generally have a higher degree of eyebrow tilt compared to males. That should not be a surprise to anybody. All right, so the bitemporal width, this measurement divides the horizontal width of the forehead from the outer edges of the hairline, or which is the outer edges of the hairline. If you're a female, it might be a little bit different. So just go from the middle of your hairline because they have undefined hairlines, unlike men. Uh, with the width of the head. So you want to divide the width of your head by the actual, or the width of your hairline by the actual width of your head. There is a strong correlation within each group, and most celebrities tend to have a medium to wide foreheads. And that's what I've seen here with the celebrities, actors, actresses that I've rated so far, and also athletes. All right, so next is the lower third proportion. So the ratio of the lower third of the face from the bottom of the chin to the subnasal area is divided by the vertical height of the lip line to the subnasal. All groups exhibit ideal lower third proportions. This is one of the most easiest measurements to pass for the most part, and as you can see, all the groups did well. Okay. So the ipsilateral angle, this angle is measured from the subnasal to the outer corners of the eyes, and the measurement, which varies based on gender and race, is influenced by the length of the nose and the eye spacing, as well as the eye orbit's width. So the ipsilateral angle, which is kind of similar to the deviation from the ipsilateral angle and the jaw frontal angle. It just focusing on that ipsilateral angle, which is the upper angle of the midface. All right. And the two main things that contribute to this angle is your your eyes, your eye spacing, and the length of your nose. All right, next is the gonial angle. This is formed between the ramus and the mandible. Native groups tend to have the sharpest gonial angles, while multiracial individuals often exhibit the widest angles. All right, so as you can see here, the lowest angle is natives at around the 124 to 121 range for male and female. And then for the multiracial group, it's kind of like the opposite. They do have more wider gonial angles. It's probably because of the ramus being book-ended, meaning that it's more diagonal rather than straight up. And the ramus tilt does have an effect. Some people think that it's only just the mandible, but the ramus also plays a role into the gonial angle. All right, so next is the nasofrontal angle. This is the outer curve of the nasion, is measured from the nasal bridge all the way up to the brow bone. And Black individuals typically have a more prominent brow bone, contributing to a lower nasal frontal angle. So Blacks, they do have more prominent brow bones that stick out. And also another thing that can contribute to it that I heard about is that if you have a lower nasal bridge, that can help out, but that's not always the case, because as you can see here, Asians, they're on the wider side of the nasofrontal angle, and they also have nasal bridges that are lower set too. So that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a lower set nasion that you're going to have a nasofrontal angle that is going to be more acute. All right, so but I heard that it does contribute to it. All right, so next is the mandibular plane angle. So the Frankfurt plane angle is measured from the perion, which is the top of the earlobe, to the bottom of the orbital rim of the eye socket. The Frankfurt plane is a flat tangent line that should be parallel to the ground and serves as a 0-degree reference point when calculating the angles of the mandible and other measurements. Whites and natives individuals generally have mandibles that slope downward more noticeably. All right, so that is for the whites and natives. Um, Typically, you don't want your mandible to be kind of sloped down too much, and that can affect also the gonial angle too. All right, so next is the ramus to mandible ratio. All right. So the ramus to mandible ratio, this ratio is calculated by dividing the height of the ramus by the length of the mandible. There is a height correlation across groups with multiracial women typically having the longest ramus. All groups perform well in this measurement. So the women for the multiracial, they have the highest at 0.81. So that means that the ramus is actually 80 plus percentage of the mandible. Some people even have mandibles or ramuses that are as high as 1-to-1. If your ramus is as high as 1-to-1, that is not ideal at all. You don't want something that's too little or too much. And if your ramus is too much, it can be too overwhelming for some people. So, and it's not going to look aesthetically pleasing. All right, so facial convexity from the glabella. This is the outer angle of the face formed by the brow bone, descending down to the subnasal and continuing down all the way to the chin. And Black individuals often have a rounder facial profile when viewing from the side. All right, so Blacks, they have more rounder facial convexities, as you can clearly see at 167. And then all the other racial groups are somewhere in the middle range. All right, submental cervical angle. So the submental cervical angle, this angle is formed from the vertical neck plane and to the submental plane, which is the bottom of the mandible, or should be found at the bottom of the mandible. And many individuals struggle with this measurement as it requires a sharp angle between the chin and the neck and free from excess fats or loose skin. So you don't want any fat or loose skin underneath that mandible area. So below your mandible, you don't want too much loose skin because that can contribute to the angle being more obtuse, and it won't look aesthetically pleasing as well. And a lot of these groups did kind of gone outside of the ideal range. Even at 110 degrees, most couldn't really get all the way up there. And yeah, so this is one of the things that can contribute to your attractiveness, is what's below your mandible area. All right, nasofacial angle. So this is the inner angle, and it is created by the face, starting from the chin, rising up to the nasion, and following the nasal bridge down. Okay, and multiracial individuals tend to have the highest angles due to their noses being more extended from their face. So multiracials, since they have protruding noses, they're gonna have the higher number. All right, nasal labial angle. So the nasal labial angle, the outer angle, is formed at the top. Or my fault. Let me start over again. This is actually the outer angle that is formed at the bottom of the nose, starting from the columella. I don't know if I'm saying it right, which is the bottom of the nose. All right, to the subnasal, then following from the philtrum to the upper lip. Okay. And white individuals typically have a more upturned nose compared to all other racial groups. And yes, whites do have more upturned noses, but like I said again, for these measurements, it does favor the European look more. So you'll see whites a little bit more with the ideal range when I show you guys these slides. So they will be more in the green area than all the other groups. So just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so the next is the orbital vector. So the orbital vector, this measurement compares the distance from the very bottom of the orbital rim of the eye socket to the furthest protrusion of the eye, which is the pupil. Multiracial individuals, they will have the less deep set eyes compared to all the other racial groups. So that means that for the multiracials, their eyes or the eye tissue, it protrudes past their orbital rim. So they will have eyes that are going to be more bug eye-ish on average compared to all the other groups. I know y'all see that, it just says neutral, 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 or slightly negative for, for the female, and then neutral, neutral. For my data sheet, because this is all going off of my data sheet. For my data sheet, it goes by the tense. So that is past the point. So let's say if it's 3.12, it can go all the way to the tenths place and the hundreds place. So that's past the decimal. So that's what I'm doing for this. So this is very minuscule, but I'm trying to be as technical as possible with all the information that I've gathered. But like I said, I'm gonna keep continuing doing what I'm doing with my data sheet, and I'm gonna also add more people from other racial groups instead of just blacks and whites focusing on them. I'm gonna continue with the other groups to make it more evened out. Okay. All right, so total facial convexity. So the total facial convexity, this is the outer angle of the entire face. So this is starting from the top of the brow bone down to the peak point of the nose and ending at the chin. So Asians, they have the highest total facial convexity due to their longer lower third. So they do have a very long lower third compared to all the other groups. I will mention that later in this video for some other measurements, and that does contribute to their face being I guess you could say the most flattest. So because it does contribute to flatness if you do have too much protrusion of the face or of the lower third. I won't just say face, but of the lower third. All right, so mental labial angle. So the mental labial angle, this angle is formed from the bottom of the lip down to the mental crease and back to the end of the chin. Asian women, they usually exhibit the smallest mental labial angles due to a less prominent chin projection. Oh, I said a less prominent chin projection. Actually, Asian women, they do have the highest chin projection. So they do have the highest prominent chin projection. I was thinking about Asian men. So Asian men, they actually have the highest chin projection. No, they have the lowest chin projection for Asian men. And then for women, for the Asian women, they have the lowest chin project. Okay. So I got a little bit mixed up. So Asian men, they have the lowest for the men's side, but for the female side, they have the highest. I got kind of confused right there just a little bit. Typically you don't really see this. You'll see more of a higher correlation. So as you can see here for the mental labial angle, this kind of tripped me up a little bit just now. As you can see, the men are all the way up here, but the females are all the way down here. And that right there kind of just tripped me up just a little bit. Normally they'll be like adjacent, so like side to side, kind of like how the multiracials right here at 118 and 117. You usually don't see this big of a difference or this big of a gap. And yeah, so from the looks of it, Asian women have a more prominent chin, and Asian men kind of lack that feature for whatever the reason is. And yeah, but even though Asian men have ideal chin projections because it's green right there, for Asian women, they just ever so slightly off. Okay. All right, facial convexity from the nasion. So facial convexity from the nasion. This measurement is taken from the nasion extending down to the subnasal and then to the chin. All right, so rather than starting from the brow bone, Blacks individuals generally have a more convex facial profile due to their forwardly projecting maxilla as y'all guys know, that blacks do have more forward projection of the maxilla, which is the mid-face plate on your face, and it means that they just have more protrusion of the mid-face. Okay. And this one is just going to be a little bit different from the facial convexity from the glabella, because the facial convexity from the glabella starts at the brow bone instead of the nasion. But for this one is the nasion, and it's still the facial profile or the facial convexity overall. And like I said again, blacks have the more rounder facial convexity, as you can see right here. And this is what I mean by adjacent. That means side to side, and they're kind of like around the same area. It's not like it's a massive difference between both groups or anything like that. Okay, so next is the nasal projection, which is a tangent line that is formed from the start of the subnasal to the nasion. Okay, the width of the nose starts from the alar base to the nose up to the nasal tip, and the tip of the nose going up to the nasion will give you the length of the nasal bridge. The horizontal line is the width of the nose, and that is being divided by the diagonal length of the nasal bridge. Okay, so multi-racial individuals, they will have the longest nasal width and size. So overall, if we're talking about the projection and size of a nose, multiracial individuals will have just the bigger nose in general. I know that kind of sounds a lot to take in what I just said, but overall, you want to divide the width of the nose, so the actual width of the nose, which is the horizontal line, by the nasal bridge of the nose, going from the nasal tip all the way to the nasion. All right, so the nasal width to height projection. So the tangent line from the nasal projection in this measurement is going to be a little bit different. The line is now perpendicular, meaning that it's going to be at 90 degrees away from the Frankfurt plane angle. There's going to be a line that's going to be perpendicular, meaning that it's going to be 90 degrees away from the Frankfurt plane angle that I talked about before when I was discussing the mandibular plane angle. Okay. And this, so it's going to be 90 degrees away from the plane angle, and it might be slightly ahead of the nasion now. So it's not going to go end at the nasion, but it's going to be slightly ahead of the nasion. And the nasal width stays the same as before, and it will be divided by the height of the nose. Okay. In order to get the height, you will have to measure it from the tangent line, which is the horizontal line from the width of the nose, all the way up to the eye line where the pupils is at. So wherever their eye line is, at where the center of the pupil, that is where it's going to stop for the height. Okay. And Asians, they have the longest nose height, while whites have the shortest, which was kind of surprising to me. I thought it was going to be the other way around, but it looks like I was wrong. And as you can see here, it seems like white men have the shortest. Actually, no. White men have the shortest heights. And yeah, white females for the female area or the range have the shortest, even though it's still within the ideal range, because females do have shorter nasal heights in general. I would have expected the opposite, me personally speaking. So this kind of surprised me too. But as I rate more people, or as I rate more celebrities, things might change a little bit, but I doubt that it would change a lot. And so as I add more celebrities in and improve my data sheet, I will try to change these numbers. Okay. And there is a high correlation with the nasal width to height ratio, or nasal width to height projection, I mean. All right, so the Ricketts E-line. So the Ricketts E-line is a tangent line that begins at the pronasal, which is the tip of the nose, and it extends down to the chin. And black individuals may score lower on this measurement due to pronatism and for protrusion of the lips. So pronatism is just think of it as like the jaw. So the upper and lower jaw just extending forward. So like their actual mouth, just think of it as it extending forward, just protruding forward. And obviously blacks do have lips that are more fuller. So we got to take that into account. And also blacks have maxillas that are more projected or more forwardly grown. So that also adds to it as well. So meaning that their nose is not going to extend too far from their face, or it's going to extend far from the face, but not as far because the maxilla is just that much protruded. So the reason why I say this is because for the rickets E line, the H line, and the S line, which I'm going to discuss later, you're going to need your nose to measure your nose, lips, and chin alignments. Okay, so that would not favor blacks. All right, so the H line, this tangent line starts at the bottom of the upper lip. Or my fault, no, at the top of the upper lip, and it extends towards the chin. And in most individuals, the lower lip seems to be slightly recessed relative to the chin and the upper lip. So starting from the upper lip down to the chin, most groups have lower lips that are ever so slightly behind that tangent line. What you want ideally is for your lower lip to actually touch the tangent line. These lip measurements are actually not that easy to pass, because you need that, perfect alignment. It doesn't have to be all the way perfect, but it has to be very close to. So these lip alignments can give some of these groups, a challenge, even white groups as well. All right, so the S line, and the S line is a tangent line that begins at the end of the camella. I don't know if I'm saying it proper, but hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying, which is at the end of your nostrils, and it extends down towards the chin. And this is one of the most challenging measurements to pass because it requires perfect alignment of multiple facial features, meaning the top lip and the bottom lip. Okay. And this is by far one of the hardest lip measurement to pass out of all of them. And it is because you need your upper lip, your lower lip to align all the way with the chin and the end of the nostril. And this is just simply a tough measurement to pass, honestly. And I don't blame anybody if they can't really pass this measurement. Even, the top celebrities that I've rated struggle to even pass this measurement. And some of them probably needed some sort of surgery to even get an alignment like that anyway. All right, so the next one is the bursal line. So the bursal line, this is the tangent line that starts at the subnasal, and it extends down towards the chin. Asian women typically have the best lip alignment, with their upper lip slightly ahead of the lower lip. So for this measurement, you want your upper lip to, it just measures whether your upper lip is ahead of your lower lip. And for most racial groups, their upper lip is going to be more ahead of the lower lip, as you can see, as the near aligned. And near aligned means that either is very ever so slightly ahead, but not enough ahead, or it is evened out. Preferably, you want your upper lip to be just a little bit more ahead of your lower lip to where it is noticeable. All right. And it doesn't negatively impact blacks on this measurement, the B line, because it doesn't take into account the nose. If it did take into account the nose, then it'll be a bit different. But since it doesn't take into account the nose, because like I said, of the maxilla and some other things as well, it doesn't negatively affect them. So that's a good thing. And also, like I said again, Asians done well with the B line, and Asians, they done pretty well with all the other measurements, which actually surprised me. All right, nasal mental angle. So the nasal mental angle is, which is very similar to the total facial convexity. This is the outer angle that begins at the nasion, and it follows the nasal bridge to the nasal tip, or all the way down to the nasal tip, and then it moves down towards the chin. Across all groups, the angle ranges from 127 to 134, and every group passed. So so this is a fairly easy measurement to pass, and it takes into account your nasal projection, your lower third projection, and also your facial convexity, which is just your outer facial convexity. All right, so going into mouth, and the gonian to mouth. So the gonian is the point where the mandible and the ramus meet. you want to use that same Frankfurt plane angle as your reference point to determine if your gonian is located below the mouth line, and the mouth line should be perpendicular to both the Frankfurt plane angle and your gonian line. This is one of the easiest or most easiest measurements to pass out of all of them. Actually, this is by far the easiest measurement to pass. Maybe the lower third or the gonian angle. No, the lower third and the gonian to mouth relationship are probably the top two easiest measurements that anybody can pass out of all of these. And honestly, if your gonian is above your mouth line, that doesn't necessarily mean that you might be an unattractive person or anything like that, but that can show other signs, like maybe like your ramens might be a little bit too short or any other things like that. But what it really does mean is that your jaw isn't really adequate or enough or big enough size for your face. Okay, so the next one is the recession relative to the Frankfurt plane angle. All right, so I call it the jaw recession to make it short. So to measure the jaw recession, place a perpendicular line that is 90 degrees away from the Frankfurt plane angle. So make sure that this perpendicular line is 90 degrees tilted away from the Frankfurt plane angle, okay? And then position it at the most prominent point of your chin. The line should be somewhere near the nasion area, depending on the person's face. So it should be around, whether it's ahead or behind it or in line with it, because we're going to use that nasion to determine whether you have a jaw recession or not. And usually Asians, they will have the longest lower thirds, or since I said they had the longest lower thirds, they're going to pass it more likely, while whites and native women, they exhibit, slight recessed jaws. So as for Asians, they don't have no jaw recessions. Whites and native women on the women's side, not the men's side, but the women's side, whites and natives, you might see some slight jaw recession with them. All right, so brow ridge inclination angle, and for the brow ridge inclination angle, this measurement assesses the angle of the forehead by using a perpendicular line to that same perpendicular line at the peak of the brow bone. So you're going to place that line at the peak of the brow bone, and men tend to have a more inclined forehead because this is likely due to higher levels of testosterone, and this is going to result to a more pronounced brow ridge, okay? And this is normal, typical, and as you can see, this is probably one of the highest correlations for all racial groups. And and I also want to say this too, is that for the women's side, I can kind of see like a big major difference it goes all the way down to 9 for natives, and then all the way up to 17 for Asian females, which is kind of a big difference, but at the end of the day, they're all still within the ideal range. And all right, so last but not least, the nasal tip. And the nasal tip, this will produce a very tight angle, and it will start with the first vector, the nasal bridge, going all the way down past the nasal tip, and you're going to have another vector, which is the second vector. It will be adjusted until there is no empty space in the middle of both vectors. And what that would be is your angle for your nasal tip, okay? So you'll literally just use your second vector to kind of adjust it, keep adjusting it until there's no space in between both vectors, making it a very tight angle. And you literally don't want any empty space in between both vectors of that angle, okay? And so white individuals, they will excel in this measurement, obviously, and often having a more defined and central nasal tip. So their nasal tip is more sharp. They usually have more of a sharper nasal tip. And this is one of the biggest European centric features, which is the nasal tip angle. That doesn't mean that other ethnic groups can't pass it, but this one is the one where they do shine a lot in And yeah, so this is pretty much it for the measurements, and for all of the measurements for all the groups. I'm still going to be updating my data sheet. I'm going to be focusing less on the top two groups, which was the blacks and the whites, and I'm gonna focus more on the other groups, and I'm gonna try to add as many people as I can for both. Down in the description, make sure to tell me who I should rate next. Make sure that is not a white person or a black person. Make sure it is somebody else other than a white or black person that is obviously a celebrity with some fame, so I can kind of see the different pictures, because sometimes it's not easy to find these pictures. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. If y'all have any questions, make sure to message me on IG. I'm gonna have my link down in the description for my IG, so y'all can hit me up there. And yeah, I'm out. Peace.